Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Rift Talks. As always, I'm your host, Dave Troop, and we're going to keep this one a little bit shorter than we went last week because that was kind of ridiculous. It was almost a full 2 hours, so to anybody who tuned into that and checked out that full episode, thank you very much. And big shout out again to Chase for coming on and being willing to talk with me for so long about the quarterfinals. And now they're behind us. So this week we're going to focus obviously on the quarterfinals. I'm going to do a quick team fight and draft actual breakdown of game one between Griffin and IG because I think that it showed a lot about the series in general. And I think it's going to be a good place for us to start before we get into that series and the rest of the quarterfinal matchups. Then we'll take a look ahead at the semifinals and see what's going to happen in those couple of series. Oh, excuse me. Something got caught in my throat there. Anyway, and then we're going to end the episode with a little bit of a discussion on, I think, one of the biggest topics that I've seen going around on Reddit, Twitter, and like all the other talk shows, etc. Everybody giving their take on how to fix the dumpster fire that is North America. And as a North American, I feel like I can talk about it a little bit without getting into too much trouble. But yeah, so that's going to be the layout of the show today, guys. So relatively straightforward, but let's start right away with this game one between IG and Griffin, because I think there's a lot here to dive into, and it really kind of gives you a good picture of not only how Griffin lost a specific game, but how they lost the series, and overall, a kind of a trap that I think we're seeing more and more teams kind of slightly fall into. Fnatic fell into it as well, and it's something I want to break down really quick. So let's take a look at the draft. So let's just pause it and we'll take a look and kind of get the lay of the land. So we're coming in here after these teams have kind of gotten all 5 bans out of the way and taking a look at basically the whole composition. So, I think the bans, at least the first set, were fairly straightforward. I was surprised to see the Jace and the Sona ban. I think those were targeted specifically at Battleland, and obviously the Shy, a very, very good Jace player. So that does kind of make a lot of sense. Then, we see the first pick coming through on the Qiyana. Obviously, that's a very, very strong and solid meta pick that, a lot of teams have really been liking. And, if you put that in the hands of a player like Rookie, that's going to do great, great things for you. Then Griffin kind of counters this with Elise, who's a very strong jungler right now. No real issues with that. I think Gragas does offer a little bit more right now. That might have been a better first pick, but if you have comfort on the Elise, then that's not really a big issue. Take the Elise and take the Poppy. Now, the Poppy is directly targeted as a Qiyana ban, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit because this is, I think, one of the big problems of the series. Or not a ban, excuse me, but a counter. So they picked Poppy to counter the Qiyana in the mid lane. Then Gragas gets picked up as, you don't want to leave that through because otherwise it could have been banned in the next rotation of bans. So they pick up the Gragas, obviously, and then take Lulu. Lulu's not a champion we've seen a lot. I don't think we've seen her yet. I think this is the first game that we saw her at the World Championship. So a bit of a out there support pick. And finally, Gnar coming in before the first set of bans. Then, obviously, we have some solo laners left to be picked. So we see Kled, Ryze, and Vayne, and Kayle, all taken away, as well as the Vayne from JackeyLove. Now, this Vayne ban was actually really telling because what it told you is that they want to pick the Garen Yuumi. And the way you know this is that there's only a couple of bot lanes that really make it really, really difficult for Garen Yuumi to exist. And Vayne's not, a strong lane counter per se to basically anything. But as the game progresses, Vayne is one of those champions that is able to completely destroy a team composition like this. And, with Vayne being banned, JackeyLove picked up the Kog'Maw, which is something, again, not a pick that we've seen at Worlds, but very, very similar. And then Battleland picking up the Yasuo to go into the solo lane as well. So you have, very AD heavy comp other than, Gragas is going to build some AP and Kog'Maw does some mixed damage as well as some true damage. So that's going to help you out there. But when you look at the composition that Griffin has selected here, they have a couple of really big problems. One, the counter to the Garen Yuumi is essentially, like I said, a hard carry, AD carry. Somebody like a Vayne or a Kog'Maw or something that can really basically destroy the whole team in a back-to-front team fight, right? So to get around that, what you need something that gives you direct backline access that allows you to kind of destroy that AD carry, dive onto them, and get rid of them right away. The problem here is that they don't have that. You have Gnar and Elise and Poppy, who are really, really good team fight champions in certain situations, but they don't offer you a way to get onto a champion like Kog'Maw, whose incredibly long range is going to keep him safe easily. Actually, you have no way of doing that. Essentially, he has to miss position, or you have to get some godlike flank based on a lack of vision. And at this level, like you're talking about the quarterfinals of the World Championships, neither team is going to do this, right? If you guys saw the show last week, this was one of the this was one of the series, that we were really debating. We thought this was going to go 5 games. We weren't sure which way this was going to go. Both teams had a real shot at winning this. And I feel like overall, Griffin lost this in drafts because you have a really talented AD carry in Viper, and you stick him on a Garen, who's basically a vessel for Yuumi, not able to do anything really in the team fights and in the later stages of this game, because he has to go from the front of he has to go all the way through the other team to get to the Kog'Maw. He has to get through the Gragas and the Qiyana and the Yasuo. And, obviously the Yasuo Gragas synergy, fantastic. The fact that you can, even if Gragas doesn't have his ult up, you can send Gragas in, Lulu ult him, that's going to get a knock up, Yasuo ult. Like, there's a lot of synergy there. The Qiyana ult. Excuse me. So there's a lot of synergy on the side of IG. Meanwhile, Griffin's comp is really kind of, it's hard. Like, I don't really know what they were trying to do with this. It's really, really tough. Like, you don't have enough damage really to 100 to 0 people. Like, you have some poke coming out from the Yuumi. Then you have Garen, obviously, with his armor shred. That's going to help Gnar do a little bit of damage. Gnar can obviously, get a really good ult off in some situations and kind of knock the whole team into a wall. But, if you're fighting around those walls that Gnar wants to fight around, well, Rookie on Qiyana is going to love that, because that's exactly what Qiyana wants to do as well. So you're kind of playing into the hands of IG here. Your composition doesn't really offer you a way to win other than by snowballing really hard in the early game. And as we're about to see in a second, once you get to the team fight stage, that's almost impossible for you to do. Overall, I think, this is kind of getting a little bit into the next segment, but I think that, Griffin really lost this game and this series as a whole in the draft phase. They just did such a poor job of picking team comps that were going to offer them possibilities to win. Whereas IG was almost always in a situation where, if you look at it, like, this is really easy. If you want to fight front to back, well, that's no problem, because all you have to do as IG is keep Kog'Maw alive, and all of a sudden, well, hey, Kog'Maw is just going to shred through everybody before anybody can get to him, and that's going to be a really, really easy victory. So let's take a look at a couple of these team fights that happened here, and I'll show you guys exactly what I mean, because the thing is that Griffin actually played the early game and the mid game to this pretty well. They got early kills. They got kills in the mid game. I mean, JackeyLove did get picked off a bunch of times on the Kog'Maw throughout that game. Like, he did not have a good game. But despite that, the couple of actual team fights that happened, there was like nothing that Griffin could do because of kind of the champions and the composition that they had. I mean, Elise is trying to get a pick, but you don't really have anything on the team that has enough instant 100 to 0 burst damage to remove that champion. Elise can obviously build full damage and can do quite a bit, but they just put themselves into such a bad spot. So let's take a look. There was 2 major team fights that happened that kind of both really cemented the fact that there was 0 chance. So the first here is at the Rift Herald. You see Griffin going for it. Now, the first thing, and the reason I wanted to start this clip here, is I want you to take a look at the timer, right? It's 15 minutes, and we can roll this forward quite a bit, because look at how long it takes for Griffin to take this Rift Herald, or to try to take it. They're going to be here for a long time. This is the problem with this composition as well. When you don't have an AD carry, you don't have the sustained damage necessary to take out these major neutral objectives like Rift Herald or Baron. You just can't do it. So look, IG is able to come in. Yasuo was in the mid lane. Everybody else was in the jungle, and they're like, oh, hey, we see you guys doing this. What's up? And look, 15-15. It's still only like 75% dead. It's going to take them another like 6 seconds to get this. And Ning here are going to throw a barrel in, and they're going to start to engage, and IG is going to call for the fight here. Now, JackeyLove walks forward, and automatically, look, they have to back off. Chovy on the Poppy has to kind of run away. Nice wind wall there from the Shy to block any sort of play from Tarzan. And again, they're just stuck here in this Baron pit. Obviously, it's the Rift Herald right now, but they're just kind of all trapped inside here, which is exactly what Rookie wants. You see him just kind of hovering on the side of the fight, waiting for something interesting to happen. And as soon as those champions are going to come out, he's going to hit them all. Sword tries to engage. That's the other thing. Sword, terrible series. That really didn't help them very much. JackeyLove's going to pick up the first kill onto Tarzan. Gnar finally gets the Mega Gnar, but he dies before he's able to do anything. Rookie's able to take out Viper, and then all of a sudden Poppy's dead, and, what's Yuumi going to do by herself? Not a whole lot. She's insta-dead too. So there's just really nothing. And I mean, Rookie didn't even ult there. I don't know if you guys took that in, but that is how mismatched these team comps were when it came to team fight time. And at this point in the game, Griffin was ahead. So what are you supposed to do when you're ahead? You can't take any neutral objectives. You can't siege turrets because you don't have anybody that can siege. This Garen Yuumi bot lane, I understand it's popular. I understand people like it because Yuumi's so strong and Garen's a great vessel for it. I get it. I don't think at this highest level that it's viable because you're talking about needing to get such a gigantic lead that I just don't see why you would wager on that. It's it's almost like disrespectful. Because again, here in this fight, you just have no way to answer this. You're all stuck in the corner of the wall. You're able to get hit with all this poke. You can't poke back other than the Yuumi. Then as soon as Yasuo lands a Q, Sword is just insta-dead. And you see him, he's here getting his Mega Gnar. He's really trying to do something, but all of a sudden, all it takes is a stopwatch coming through and a flash. His ult is completely negated. He's not able to do anything. Chovy, who's supposed to be a carry, was put on a Poppy, which, another problem in this series. Chovy was just constantly on tanks and counter picks. That's the guy that everyone was saying was going to carry you this series, right? And he did not, because you didn't give him the champions to be able to carry a game. You gave him the champions to counter Rookie and say that Rookie can't carry the game. But the problem is that there's also the Shy, and you just don't need to do that necessarily. I think you needed to try and fight fire with fire and go, okay, we have more confidence in Chovy than you guys, and that he's going to be able to beat you. And they didn't really do that. Instead, they said, well, just make sure that Rookie doesn't destroy us all. And Rookie didn't really play that great this series, so it was just not necessary. And honestly, I don't know. I think that draft, that fight shows you kind of what I was talking about, but the second fight is, just a further cementation on that point. So basically, that fight happens. Rift Herald goes to IG, and then Griffin does a great job in the mid game, controlling vision and getting a whole bunch of picks. They kill JackeyLove. Look, JackeyLove's got 3 deaths now. You got a couple deaths on a Rookie. They've been picking these guys off left, right, and center. Still, they're not going to be able to win this fight. So IG is going to go, look how fast we can take Baron with Yasuo Kog'Maw. And again, look how much faster this is going down. It started at 30-45 roughly. And, 5 seconds in, the Baron, which is a much stronger objective, is over halfway through. Now, a beautiful ult there from Rookie, comboed with the Yasuo ult. And all of a sudden, even though Griffin is able to pick up a kill on a Ning, they're able to take out they're able to take out the Gragas. They're able to hit a perfect Gnar stun, right? So everything's looking great. That's how you want to play the fight. Look how quickly it all just disintegrates on them. Nobody can touch JackeyLove on the Kog'Maw, and he's just able to sit there and destroy everybody. Now Rookie pulled, real BM there. Actually, not really. Kog'Maw did go down, but he did lose the pentakill. But he was able to pick up a quadra kill before he's taken out, disintegrating the entire Griffin lineup. And it's just, there's nothing that they could do about that. They could not get to Kog'Maw, even with all of that expenditure. They just couldn't get there. So again, you're going to see, Viper, Sword, they're walking in. They're saying, hey, we see you guys doing Baron. We don't want you to do that. But a beautiful job by Rookie. Gets that ult, the Qiyana ult, does a ton of damage instantly, even though Ning gets deleted. There's nothing that Griffin can do. And, I don't know. I mean, other than maybe getting hit by Rookie's ult, that fight couldn't have gone a whole lot better. But Kog'Maw is just able to do so much damage. And even though he's eventually taken out, it's too little too late. You had to invest all of that time and energy into getting to him. He was able to shred you. The rest of his team was able to hit you at free will. And this was kind of the thing, right? Because of how fast you were able to take a neutral objective with this IG team comp, Griffin had to respond. They had to respect that. They had to come contest that Baron. They didn't have a choice. Like we saw before, like as the Baron kind of gained vision again, it was 25% health. If they waited an extra 5 seconds, that's a free Baron for IG. So you have to go contest that. The problem is that to go contest that, you have to walk into a Qiyana ult, which is why, Qiyana's so popular. She's really, really strong, especially around that Baron pit. But in that game, Griffin picked themselves into a hole. And those compositions, I think, demonstrated it. And in that whole series, it was kind of the same thing. I mean, Sword played awful, so I was expecting more from him. I'm not gonna lie. Tarzan did what he could. I thought he played all right, but it wasn't his best series for sure. But I don't necessarily think it's entirely his fault because, especially in this meta, mid jungle synergy, mid jungle presence is such a big deal. But the problem is you didn't really have that mid jungle presence because Chovy was put on these characters and these champions that he couldn't carry the game with. He could kind of stop Rookie from carrying the game, but he couldn't carry the game himself. And I've said this with Bjergsen, I've said this with a whole bunch of other like top talents or the guys who are the stars on their team. It's great to not necessarily be greedy, right? And to not demand that all of the gold goes to you and that you don't need this massive gold distribution, etc. But to put yourself on a champion where you can't carry the game, when you're the person who's supposed to carry the game, really actually kind of hurts your team because the team is used to winning when you're going off and making all these plays, etc. But you can't do that when you're not on a champion that allows you to do that, right? It was just really, really rough. Like, yeah, game 2, I think Chovy was on the Galio that we see here. And it's just like, what are you supposed to do when your player who's supposed to carry everything is really just like an engage bot? It just doesn't really make that much sense. I understand Galio into LeBlanc, good lane matchup, sure, but again, you're talking about some of the best players in the world. You're not going to stomp lane 6-0 and just be able to snowball off a useless LeBlanc. Like, that's not how this works. So you're not going to die in lane, sure, that's great, but like you're supposed to get all the kills, and the Galio out there does absolutely nothing. Like, I don't know. This series was really frustrating to watch because if you guys watched last week, you know that I picked Griffin to win this game and the series, and I thought it was going to be a 3-1 or a 3-2 for Griffin. Credit to IG. They showed up. They had smart picks and bans prepared. They really knew what they were doing, and it showed. They were able to take that series relatively easily, but to me, it really did look more like SKT. Good God, I'm getting ahead of myself. Like Griffin lost the series rather than IG won it. Like after every pick and ban phase, I was like, oh no, why did you do this? This doesn't make any sense. And so when you put yourself in that sort of hole, like I don't really know what you're supposed to do. Viper looked great. It's just unfortunate that the game 1 on Garen was really not helpful for him. But I don't know. Like when you have some AD carries that are this talented, that's the other thing that with the Garen pick that I really dislike. And I'm going to talk about it again when we get to the Fnatic series. I don't understand why you're putting one of the best AD carries in the world on a brain dead champion like Garen. Like you Q, you run forward, you E, doesn't utilize any of the mechanics or any of the positioning or any of the knowledge or the skill set that a top tier elite AD carry has. So somebody like Viper, who's such a talented ADC, and you're putting him on a champion where he's not able to use his positioning, not able to use his consistent damage output abilities, not able to use his abilities and his like thought processes where he's able to see the skills go down and use like kind of dive in and out of the fight as there's openings and windows for him to take an opportunity and advantage of. You're really just putting a handcuff on your own player for the sake of saying, well, we think Yuumi can carry. And, Yuumi is really, really strong, but they have nerfed her. She doesn't have that insanely, like 20% is still good, but it used to be 80% slow. It's not that anymore. So I just think we've seen too much focus on that. But yeah, this series, I thought it was really just Griffin losing more than IG winning. All right, the next series that day, which I also called wrong. I really hope none of you took my betting advice. I thought Fnatic was going to win this. I really didn't like the way I saw FPX play throughout the majority of the group stage. But good God, man. Like, Hylissang is so bad. Now, Bwipo, this first game is fun. Bwipo had an insane game on Rengar. But again, we see this Garen Yuumi bot lane, and it's just like you have Reckless, who's this fantastic AD carry, and you're putting him on Garen. Like, that's great. But I mean, Bwipo gets the solo kill first blood. That's not something you see in pro play hardly ever. So that's insane, right? Really, really good job by him. I thought he played a fantastic game. It was just too bad that they weren't able to do anything with it. And, the 4-man dive comes in bot lane. That's just going to negate. Like, with Garen Yuumi, you have to win lane hard. You have to get ahead because you can't siege turrets in a mid game. And like I said earlier, you don't really have the damage to take down something like a Baron or a Dragon very quickly. So all the early objectives go to FPX. Everything goes their way, despite a really good game from Bwipo. Like Bwipo comes down here and gets a bunch of kills bot lane. It's like looking really, really good, but they just didn't have a way to push the game forward. And that is such a big deal. Like, the mid game is so important in League of Legends at a pro level. Like, so important. Yes, early game is strong and it's good, but a lot of times, especially as you go higher in levels, it's really, really hard to get such a gigantic advantage off the early game that you can win. You might be able to get 1,000 gold or 2,000 gold lead or something, which is pretty strong in the early game. But if your mid game isn't strong enough to really snowball that advantage, like if you have like this sort of thing where you need them to fight you and the other team's just aware, like, hey, they can't siege our turrets, we can just wave clear, and what are they going to do? Like, we can take the dragons. And that's the other thing, is just that the timing from Fnatic was just bad, I felt like, in a lot of the games. The other problem that they had, which is it's tough, but it was a really, really bad series from Hylissang. Like, and I mean really bad. Like, this guy struggled in the group stage, but oh my god, like, he was just feeding essentially. Like, the way he played support some of those games, you'd like report him for inting if he was in your solo queue game. Like, it was awful. I'm trying to keep the language here like moderate, but good god, man, I would be super tilted if that was the performance in a quarterfinal from my support player. Like, that was just like, some of the engages terrible. His Alistar, not good. Like, anything that's a one-way ticket. I mean, his fourth game on Pyke was okay. That is his best champion, and he played pretty well on that. I'll give him credit. But on every champion that's not called Pyke, that dude, I don't know, man. It's just like, he needs to spend a lot more time practicing some of these more traditional like tank supports, because he just does not look good on them at all. Especially at this World Championship. Like, he was just, even in group stage, he was kind of outclassed, but in this series, he was just made to look like absolutely terrible. And it wasn't even like just in lane. Like, he was okay in lane. I mean, he did die a little bit more than he probably should have, but he just got caught out constantly. And yeah, that's kind of a team thing. Like, when you're going to ward, you should be saying, hey guys, where are we getting vision? Okay, on this side of the map, okay, a couple of you need to be around here ready for, in case they try and jump on me, or in case they had vision priority and we didn't know and I get jumped on. I need some support. But overall, I just felt like his decision making was not great. His engages were far from ideal. I don't know. Overall, it was just a really, really bad time. I mean, Game 3, Ornn came to the rescue, obviously. Nemesis, huge on Veigar. I think that guy needs to play more Veigar, just in general. Like, he beat Faker with it handily. He looked great in Game 3. I think that, Nemesis is definitely he gets a lot of stuff for the TF, and this is actually something that I didn't mention. Like Chase was saying this last week too. Like, every single game, Fnatic had the Twisted Fate banned out against them, right? And in group stage, and people thought, well, damn, like, Nemesis must be this god tier Twisted Fate, but ultimately they weren't able to do enough with it. Like, they weren't able to make anything work. Like, in this game too, like, you should have been able to get picks on Varus. You should have been able to stop him from snowballing. But instead, like, Varus ends this game like a ridiculous, like, 11-7 or something. Like, it's just ridiculous how fed he got at the end of game 2. I don't know. So that was kind of disheartening to me, because I thought, we were going to see really good Nemesis TF game 1. That was going to force TF bans and really start to open up the field for what could happen in the rest of the series. But instead, TF came out in game 1 and it was very underwhelming. They tried it again in game 2. It was okay. Like, he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that it didn't have the impact that you need for a pick like that to make it a ban, right? I thought it was actually pretty well done by FPX to kind of like counter some of those TF roams. Like, they knew when it was going to come, but ultimately, I don't know. It was a really disappointing series. I didn't think Broxah played that well. He didn't play bad, but I was hoping for a better performance from him as well. So all in all, I mean, those are the two series that I got wrong, and I feel bad about it because I honestly thought that both of those series were winnable. Fnatic, I think I did put too much credit in Hilly though. I thought he could, kind of recover and get back to a decent form, but my God, man, like Fnatic might need to look in replacing him, or he needs to figure something else out because that was just awful. All right, Series 3, SKT versus Splyce. Now, this was the one series that obviously nobody really thought. Like you talk to like 100%, like 99.999% of people, probably even if you ask the Splyce players and coaching staff and ownership off record, they're like, yeah, we're done. It's been fun. I think one of the players even tweeted out like, well, it's been a good run, boys. Like they just knew it was over. And it really showed. Like game one, here we have a different person who absolutely sucked. And I hate to say it, but it was Chachi. I mean, he got stomped into the ground every single game other than game 3 where he played Ornn. Ornn was like Europe's savior in this round. Like it seemed like they could pick Ornn, they could get one win out of it, and then it would either get picked against them or like it just wouldn't work, right? And it's kind of funny because Damwon tried it in the final series, but it didn't work out so well for them. But Europe really knew how to pull off the Ornn, and I was actually quite impressed. North Garen played really well, I thought. Not well enough to win, but and Kobe is really, really, really good. Like that guy is a legit ADC. But unfortunately, Khan was just able to straight up disrespect Chachi, and there was nothing that the Splyce could do about it. Like game 1, he picks Lucian into the Gangplank. Yes, that is a hard counter matchup, but he just absolutely annihilated him. Like he ended the game like 7-1-4 or something like that. Like just absolutely crucified them. Game 2, he blind picks Fiora. And even though he gets ganked early and dies, to the Poppy and the Olaf gank, Klid comes up on the Elise, instantly able to get him that kill back, and then from there, Khan just starts to snowball. And you can see on your screen right now, he's 4-1. Like he just went off this game. Faker, I think, interestingly, didn't actually have the greatest series. Like game 3, his Azir, which is like supposed to be his champion, that's like the guy he plays the most, was very underwhelming. Game 1, he played Lissandra. Game 2, Tristana was, more of an assist champion than it was a kill champion. Like, he didn't shine the way people, I think, expect Faker to shine. But that's the kind of the crazy thing about this SKT team is this is the first team where it's not all about Faker. And in fact, Faker is just really, really good kind of supportive role. Like, he's always able to do his job regardless of how hard he gets pressured, regardless of how much he gets ganked, regardless of the whole situation of the game. And Teddy, my God, man, like this guy is an insane AD carry. He's really, really fun to watch. He pulls off some crazy plays. He's super aggressive, super confident in his abilities. And you can see why when you watch, because he's just able to execute things at such a high level, gets away with some crazy stuff. But it did really feel like SKT was kind of playing. That's what the scary thing is. I thought SKT looked good, but it looked like they were being pretty disrespectful. Like they were just doing what they wanted. Teddy diving into the back line with reckless abandon, like a blind pick Fiora coming out. In game 3, they even subbed in Mata, which was insane. If any of you guys are longtime League of Legends fans like I am, that guy was obviously, there was a point where he might have been the best player in the whole world. Definitely you could argue that. I mean, Samsung White Days, he was unbelievable, called the Thresh Prince. Like he was just so good. He ended up kind of stealing that moniker from Edward, who was also really good at Thresh. But this guy was just on a whole nother level of support. His vision control, everything was fantastic. So they sub him in, thinking, hey, we're going to give you a game. Like, this is a game that doesn't really matter. We're going to win anyway. Ended up not being the case. Mata was not able to do all that much. And unfortunately, you really saw in the mid game, Teddy, fantastic game from Draven. But what I thought was kind of the problem was that even though Draven got pretty fed, they did a really, really good job of making sure that he wasn't able to really contribute that much in team fights. Like Chachi actually used the Ornn Horn pretty well and like the engage pretty well to make sure that it was almost impossible for Draven to do anything. And then you combine that with, Kobe just diving in on Kai'Sa to make sure that that gets cleaned up. And all of a sudden, there's not a whole lot that the Draven could do. So they really did a good job bullying him, even in team fights, even after he got like 4 kills in one fight or something, and just became an absolute monster. But he wasn't really able to leverage that. And this was definitely the best game Splyce looked like. But it was kind of the story of the series was that the early game would kind of go even in kills. Splice would able to trade kill for kill here and there. Oh, it looks okay, but every objective was going SKT's way. Every neutral objective went to SKT. All the dragons, the Rift Heralds, like turret advantages, everything. And then off of that, the mid game, like Splice just had their traditional mid game where they just sucked. And in Europe, they were able to kind of bear through that, apart from playing Fnatic and G2, who were obviously better teams. But against everybody else, they could kind of get through that mid game, and then in the late game, kind of really come into their own. But against a team like SKT, that wasn't going to happen. So I mean, I think the series was pretty straightforward. I never saw anybody that thought Splice was going to win the series. If you did see a legitimate analyst or somebody who really follows this game and not just some Splice fanboy who thought Splice was going to win, I'd love to see that, because I don't know. I didn't see any of it. So I think this was the most straightforward series, and definitely the least interesting. What I did find was kind of interesting, though, was that every single series was 3-1. So we didn't have a single game of best of 5 go the full distance, and we didn't have a single sweep. This series could have been a sweep, I think, but SKT wanted to give Mata the game. They wanted to let him play, and like I said, they were kind of being a little bit disrespectful. In Game 4, they kind of buckled down and really just destroyed Splice to kind of remove any doubt that it was possible for Splice to get the win. So overall, though, good performance from Splice, top 8, and definitely nothing to be ashamed of. All 3 European teams getting through to the round of 8 is actually huge for the European region. So massive props to all 3 teams. I definitely think Fnatic and Splice had their weaknesses exposed, had some issues in their game exposed. What they choose to do within the offseason is obviously up to them, but there are definitely some players that might require looking at, or at least overall strategies, or how they approach the game. There's definitely some issues with those teams if they want to take another step, a step forward to becoming a legitimate potential top 4 teams. Now, the series that I thought was going to be the most interesting, Damwon and G2. Not the most interesting. I think the IG Griffin series was probably the one I had labeled the most interesting. But this G2 Damwon series actually kind of had me conflicted, I guess you could say. Obviously, G2 looked really, really good until the end of groups, where it did look like they kind of just stopped caring, which is fair. They had already secured going through. They were 4-0 or 5-0, excuse me, to start the group stage. So it did kind of look like in those games against Griffin that they weren't really the serious G2. But Damwon looked so good. I mean, I'm still super hyped on Canyon. He didn't have the best series, but not necessarily his fault. I thought actually what happened in this series was really, really interesting. So G2 decided to shut down Naguri completely. They gave Wunder Jace, and he was able to absolutely dominate him 2 games in a row. And shutting down one of the 2 solo laners that's supposed to carry Damwon, that had a huge impact, because Game 3 then they had to pick Jace and they had to ban it. Jace just became a problem in this series that we haven't really seen at the World Championship, other than with IG with Shy. The Shy. Jace hasn't been a champion that's prioritized at all, but Wunder showed that he can do good things with it and really made it work. Jankos, fantastic series. Jankos, this is what I wanted to see. I thought Canyon, I thought this was going to be a really interesting matchup, because Canyon, obviously the number 1 rated player in solo queue in Europe, really, really quickly, has been phenomenal all tournament. I thought he was the best jungler in the group stage, period. With the way he played that group stage, I thought he was the number 1 jungler performance-wise in that portion of the event. But Jankos here showed him who was boss and really, really played these games meticulously. I mean, he was great at getting early leads. He constantly got Wunder ahead. He was always helping out Caps, and that's it. The final game, Game 4, Caps and Jankos together. Caps was on Yasuo, and they just roamed around the map together. They picked up kills left and right. They put Naguri so far behind in the top lane that it was impossible for him to do anything. And that's just when you have. And this is what I was talking about earlier. When you have a mid jungle synergy that's really, really strong, and both players are able to kind of vibe off one another and kind of help snowball that advantage and help snowball that lead, you can really wreak havoc on another team. And this is kind of the power of giving your mid laners strong champions that they're able to do this with, right? So I think Caps looked great, Perks looked great. The one game, Game 2. So this is another interesting fact. All the series had the exact same layout except for this one, where Damwon was able to take Game 2. Now, Perks, obviously being a good mid laner before they transitioned him to AD carry, they put him on Orianna. Seems fine. The problem is that the reason that you take mage's bot lane is so then that way you can like push in the lane hard, snowball the lane hard, provide a lot of kill potential. That's why like Syndra's so popular, because if her stun, you can chain that with your CC from your support and just guarantee a kill, or the other way around. And essentially, Ori doesn't really provide that in the laning phase. Like Ori is a very scaling champion. Like she's a really strong late game, but you kind of have to get her there. And through the mid game, because of the way you tend to itemize, where you need some mana early and stuff like that, like she really benefits from having levels, a level advantage on the other squishies, like a level advantage on the AD carry on the opposing side. So that way, if you actually hit that shockwave combo, you can almost guarantee that that AD carry is going to die. Problem was that wasn't the case here. Because she's in the bot lane. And, Ori doesn't really have that hard, quick shove either early on. So you weren't able to free up Mickey to roam. And you didn't have the additional damage that you needed on the Orianna. So even though the game was kind of back and forth, unfortunately, G2 really just wasn't able to get anything going in the team fights. Like, they just couldn't really win a team fight. And it just felt like Ori just always had a little bit too little damage, unfortunately. And the rest of the damage coming in on the AD side with Jace and Caps. Like Jace is more of a poke heavy champion, and there wasn't really a lot of poke on this team. Like, yeah, you had the Elise to throw in a Spiderling here and there, but like you don't have like a Lux or something, right? That or an Ezreal that like really excels at it. So I honestly think an Ezreal mid here might have worked a little bit better if you were going to do this, or even just like I don't know why they put the Ori bot lane. Like I think you just put the Ori mid lane into the Ryze. It's a fine matchup. It's even. You don't maybe have as much kill pressure, but that's okay. And Ryze ended up going off huge anyway, so like it didn't really, the Renekton didn't really work. I think if you put Ori mid lane here and you give Perkz an AD carry, maybe this game goes a little bit different. But ultimately, a really good job by Damwon. And this is, I definitely got a little bit nervous at this point because I was like, oh god, Damwon might actually pull this off. They were able to take both Barons. They took every single dragon in the game. You guys can see on your screen right now. There's 5 dragons there on the side of Damwon. The one dragon that G2 did get was the Elder at the very end of the game, which they had to go for because they knew that if Damwon having 5 dragons, if G2 gives up that Elder dragon, then it's GG. But unfortunately, when they kind of all got caught in that Elder Dragon pit, lost the fight, and that was the game anyway. But it was a good. I really did like the play from G2 at the very least. They recognized that they had to do that. They didn't have a choice if they wanted to win, unless they wanted to just like sit in base and wait for the game to end. So yeah, this is the play right here. They do go for the Baron, but unfortunately, like it's just the team fight wasn't strong enough. You see there, like the ult really didn't do anything for Orianna. Like it's just unfortunate. Realistically, like Kennen just does so much damage. An AP Kennen, when you're all trapped in the Baron pit or the Dragon pit like that, like that's just like, he's trying not to have an orgasm at that point. He realizes how good that's going to be. So ultimately, though, Damwon wasn't able to pull it out. Felt like Showmaker was not really given that much potential to carry. I felt like they put him on a lot of really hard scaling champions, which is good, except the G2 is pretty aggressive, and they kind of forced the issue in the early to mid game. So when you put Showmaker on all these super aggro or super scaling champions, then he's not really able to carry you through that mid game. He kind of wants to go a little bit later, and unfortunately for Damwon, it just never really got there. So ultimately, though, I really like the game plan from G2. They knew to shut down Naguri. They knew. I think Showmaker could have done a little bit more, but the way G2 drafted was pretty intelligent. I liked how, game 3, Damwon tries to take the Jace, and G2 says, well, you know what? We're going to pick Yorick, because Yorick counters Jace pretty hard. And even though I still think Yorick is a terrible champion, it just kind of worked for them. They were able to keep that lane a 1v1 for as long as possible and really make Jace's life miserable. And ultimately, the Yorick did fine. So ended up working. I thought it was really interesting, kind of unique draft adaptation. We keep saying unique champions, which is crazy. Like in quarterfinals, we saw Lulu, we saw Rengar, we saw Kog'Maw, now we're seeing Yorick. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see almost every single champion before the end of this World Championship. Like, it's crazy. And here, Damwon fell into the trap of not taking an AD carry. They took, the Gragas Yasuo bot lane is definitely better if you're going to do this. I definitely like it more than the Garen Yuumi bot lane. The problem is that Nuclear is looked like a solo queue Yasuo. I think the caster said it at one point. Like, he was just dying, and like he's just, I don't know. He was not good. It worked for them, I think, once in the group stage, but that was because Showmaker and Naguri just went ham. And you can't, like, against G2, that's not going to happen, right? Like, Wunder is good. Caps is really good. But overall, G2 super impressed. I'm really depressed to get into the next topic of the show because this is where things get weird. Semifinals, right? So saw the quarterfinals. That was all well and good. Semifinals, we have an all-Chinese semifinal, FPX versus IG, and then a semifinal that honestly could be the tournament final in another like alternate universe with SKT taking on G2. I hate how many times this seems to happen to us, where we have like the two best teams in the tournament, or like a lot of the teams, two of the three maybe best teams in the tournament that people think are like the teams to beat in the semifinals, because then it kind of makes for sometimes, not always, but it can sometimes make for a lackluster final. And I think this year might be that situation. Nothing against IG and FPX. I think they both played pretty well and this week. But SKT and G2, for me at least, are clearly the best two teams of this tournament. They look fantastic. They look really, really strong. They'll have multiple options. And this is what I think is key as you get further and further in a tournament like this. Like, SKT has so many options that can carry the game for you. You have Faker, who everybody knows can pop off and do Faker things, and that's great. You have Khan, who showed in the last series how good he can be if you let him scale up, and he's just going to decimate a side lane or something. Teddy is fantastic. Klid is really good. So you have this really, really strong team, and G2 is the same thing. Jankos played phenomenally. Like, I can't underscore that enough. Like, Jankos played so well in that quarterfinal, excuse me. And that him versus Klid is going to be a great jungle matchup. Caps and Perks, really, really strong players. Wonder, the same thing. So overall, I don't know what's going to happen in that semifinal. It makes me sad that it's the semifinal and not the final. But honestly, I could see it going either way. Like, it's kind of a cop-out, but I've never been more 50-50 on a series. It depends on what G2 shows up. I know that SKT, like Faker said it, I think, after the series that he played in the quarterfinals, that he has never been like, he's super motivated to get that revenge. And just showing, I completely forgot about this, the disrespect in game 4, Khan taking the Quinn just to shut down Vizicsacsi's Renekton completely. Like, this is one of the hardest counters. You're going to, earlier in the tournament, we actually saw some people who wanted to first pick Renekton banning out the Quinn because they knew how bad this matchup could go. And I think Chachi ended up like, yeah, you see the scoreline there. He's 1-5. I think he was 0-4 at one point. Like, just got absolutely decimated this game, which is just super hard when you're on a champion like Renekton, who's supposed to be about getting early game presence, building up, and being stronger than everybody else. When you're constantly forced out of lane, you can't do anything. So SKT has a gigantic champion pool of versatility. Same thing with G2. That is going to be a phenomenal semifinal. In terms of who's going to win, I guess I'm going to give it to G2. I guess I'll be a Western fan and say I have faith in G2. It is a coin flip, though. Like, Teddy is such a good AD carry. He could easily carry. Khan can carry out of the top lane, although, Wonder's definitely going to put up a better fight than Chachi. I think that Khan is still better than Wonder. Mid lane is kind of a toss-up. Jankos, with how he played, I'd give him a slight, if he plays the same way he played in the quarterfinals, I'd give him a slight advantage over Klid, but, Klid is one of the best junglers in the world, without a doubt. So, I don't know. As I'm going through this, I'm realizing, like, I think most of SKT's lanes are better. Maybe I don't know. I don't know where I don't know what rationale I have for giving G2 an edge in this. I'm just hoping that, the home crowd, all that good stuff. Spain, you better be cheering loud, because, that's Ocelot's country. It's his organization, his team. Nothing would make him happier than a win there. So both teams have so much to play for. I really want to give it to G2, but it's like my heart is saying G2, but my brain is saying SKT. As I think about it more and more, I don't know. I'm not going to make a prediction on that series. It's just, watch it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really, really good series. The one thing I will predict is I think that series will go 5 games. I don't think either team is going to be able to shut out the other one in like 3 or 4 games. I think that's going to be a full 5-game series. IG versus FPX, a little bit easier series for me to talk about. I think that IG will come out on top in this. When you just look at the rosters, like, you have Shy, you have Rookie, they're really, really good players. Like they're two of the best solo laners at this tournament, hands down. I think they're way, way better than Gimgoon and Doinb. Now, actually, Doinb can play really well, so I don't want to necessarily denigrate him that much, but I think, the shy to Gimgoon, that's a massive advantage. Doinb, Rookie, I think Rookie's slightly better, but is definitely closer to a wash. Tian might be better than Ming, so that's probably where FPX has their advantage. LWX and Crisp is a solid bot lane, but obviously, we all remember that LWX game from group stage where he just got wrecked by J Team by being an idiot. We haven't seen one of those games since, thankfully. You can counter that with JackeyLove getting caught out in the mid game a lot against Griffin. So, but he played pretty well the rest of the series. I don't know. Overall, though, I think that I like the solo laners out of IG a little bit more. I think that's going to free up Ning just a little bit more to do more, to be more in control of the game. Whereas I feel like Tien's going to have to kind of be, playing damage control and following Ning around. So it's going to be more like he's not really going to be able to be as proactive as he might like to be otherwise. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do think IG's going to take this in 5 games. So it would be crazy if we saw an IG G2 finals, because that would be kind of reminiscent of last year. Obviously, it was Fnatic in the finals, but a China Europe finals. Although I don't necessarily. It's tough. That's a tough one. But yeah, I think overall I'm going to have to give it to IG here. I think they had a much more difficult quarterfinal matchup against Griffin. And the fact they were able to beat that, that's going to give them some confidence. They're going to be feeling good. Rookie has a whole other week to get into form, to keep getting into form. The shy, can play the way he's been playing. And I think overall that it's going to be relatively convincing. I think 4 games is reasonable. Definitely not going to be a sweep. These teams know each other so well. Now, I realize that people are going to say, well, wait, FPX won China and IG was from China. FPX is clearly the better team. They already played domestically. Yes and no. I mean, Rookie was dealing with, I believe, a death in the family or something like that. So he had to go back to Korea and was not playing for a while and had all this family stuff. And that can really take it. League of Legends is such a weird game. And the fact that it's simple, relatively simple mechanically, you think. There's only 4 buttons, your skills, yeah, you have a couple of actives sometimes and stuff, but there's not that much really to do mechanically, but you do lose your skill relatively quickly, and you do kind of lose your thought processes relatively quickly on it. If you get back into the game, you'll notice you're pretty rusty, even if you've taken a month off. So I think we're finally seeing Rookie kind of come back into form, and I just wouldn't bet against the Rookie and Shy, especially after how well they played in that quarterfinal. I did think that Tarzan was going to be a big enough skill discrepancy in the jungle to kind of give Griffin the edge last week, but I don't feel that way with Tian, and I think that ultimately it should be a relatively simple walk for IG. Plus, these guys won the World Championship last year. They want to be the first team to do it back-to-back years, and they might be able to pull it off. So, I don't know. We'll have to see, but my ball's in the IG court right now. So IG versus the winner of SKT G2. God, I really want to say G2, but ultimately I think my brain is telling me to go for SKT. I think it might be an IG SKT finals, folks. But don't make a bet based on what I said, because last week I told you to do that and I would have lost you money. So just a lowly analyst here, guys. This is the nature of making predictions. Sometimes you're wrong. Anyway, both series are going to be really, really good, though. Definitely want to catch both of them. I know they're early, especially if you live on the West Coast. Just stay up. You play video games. Stay up, play video games, watch the series, go to sleep after. It's only 1 series, not 2. So it's not 10 hours of potential gameplay. It's only 5. So you can still get to sleep at a reasonable time, 9 in the morning or something. If that's not reasonable to you, then you're not a gamer. All right. For the final section of the show, hot takes. I want to talk about NA. I think we touched on it a little bit last week, but we tried to, there was a lot to break down in terms of games last week. There was an insane amount of the group stages, and then all the quarterfinals. There's double the amount of series to preview, so we kind of went way into the weeds there. This week, though, I thought Liquid obviously got eliminated in the groups, and it keeps happening in North America. Our teams do not do well. So what do we do? Because this is one of the biggest regions. Riot's obviously here. their home base is North America. Everybody wants North America to do better from the Western world, I think. Even Europeans, as much as they like the NA rivalry, I think they would like us to get at least one team past a Chinese or a European, or not necessarily European, but Chinese or Korean team. And I think they'd be happy about that, to see just the Western world in general doing well. So I don't know exactly what the goal is for North America, because the way I see it, there's two different ways to approach this. Like, you can approach it from a short-term perspective or a long-term perspective. So in the short term, what we could do is try to import actual superstar players. Now, people go, but we imported Huni. And it's like, no, stop that. Like, the way North America acts right now is kind of like the Toronto Maple Leafs did before they implemented a salary cap in hockey. Now, if you don't know what I mean by that, there used to be no salary cap in the NHL, and the Toronto Maple Leafs were basically like the Yankees in terms of their budget. Like, they had like infinite money, except instead of signing the best players in the league for like really expensive amounts of money, what we did instead was we'd find players that finished their prime contract, like the contract when they were in their prime, and they were the best player in the league like 3 years ago, and they had this huge name, and we'd pay them almost the same amount, but now they're old and they're not very good. That's not completely fair. They're good, but not the best of the best anymore, right? So we're getting a lot of these players they had really good careers. They're solid players, like Team Liquid, Impact, Core JJ. Problem is, they're not like, you look at the best players in the world right now this year, and you wouldn't put either, maybe Core JJ. Core JJ might be like the one exception to what I'm talking about. But other than that, like Impact, a great role player, never been the guy that you would, never like a dominant lane presence. Even when he was in Korea, you wouldn't say he's like the best top laner. Like, really, he fit that team perfectly. And I think, I understand why Liquid picked him. He kind of fits Liquid's role of what they need of a top laner. Like, somebody self-sufficient, doesn't demand a lot of resources, allows Jensen and Double F to do their thing, carry, yada, yada. Except, didn't really work like that. Like, it's not entirely Impact's fault. Like, Jensen had an awful couple of games that really mattered, I think. But I think that if we're going to really try and compete like next year, we need to like go to the world championship type caliber team. Like, you need to go like poach Canyon, right? Like, pull one of these guys who's like literally one of the best mechanical players in the world, and like really, really smart, always in the right spot at the right time, always doing the right thing. And you need to pull those guys in. Now, there's problems with our culture. People like Loco Doco have said this, that it's really hard to coach in North America compared to a place like Korea because of how players view the coaches and respect authority and all that sort of stuff. But we're not fixing that in a year. So ultimately, though, I do think that fixing this anytime soon is probably actually unrealistic. What I think the bigger problem is overall is that our player base is not as dedicated to actually being great. So like, you look at Korea, they lose players to China. They have top players retire. They lose players to North America. They lose these great players all the time. Like, guys who, like, in the LCS would still be top tier LCS players, right? They lose those guys every year to different regions or to retirement. Or they just get phased out because they're not good enough to play anymore. They have these new up-and-coming guys. Like, who heard of Canyon a year ago? Who heard of Naguri and Showmaker like a year or 2 years ago? Nobody. We've got Doublelift still, Bjergsen still. Like, we've got all these legacy names that are good. Like, they're good players still, do not get me wrong. But we're not producing this new talent at the rate that we need to stay competitive. It's just not happening. And that's a big problem. And I think that starts from our solo queue environment. Pros widely have said that solo queue here is a joke. It's by far the worst solo queue. And if you don't think that matters on a professional level, like, imagine if like NBA players or like, professional sports players, like they couldn't practice with like their teammates, and they had to practice with like guys at the YMCA. Now, I realize that teams have practice here, but solo queue is a really important part of that practice, where you're supposed to go and you're supposed to test your individual ability to carry a game and pop off and like do all these things. But no one takes it seriously here. And it starts at like the lowest levels. Like, we have the biggest casual population out of any region. More players here play games, play things other than ranked at the highest region. So I know this sounds kind of crazy to you if you're in like gold or silver or something and you don't play ranked, like you play normals more. Stop doing that. play ranked and take it seriously. And I don't mean flame your teammates when you die and like doing all this dumb stuff, but like go in there and try to win and try to get better and try to improve every single game and demand that of yourself. Like, and I get it. Like, it's a game. I'm just here to have fun. Cool. Nobody likes losing. So take it seriously. Try and get better. Because the other thing is, like, I don't really understand that attitude. Maybe this is just a personal thing. But if I'm doing something and I'm putting any amount of time into it, I want to see myself get better at it. Like, otherwise, like, if I've been playing a game for like a year and I'm just as shit now as I was a year ago, like, what have I been doing? I've just literally been wasting my time. And video games are, you know, some people do coin them as a waste of time if you're not going to go pro. But I think it's kind of like at a personal level, you almost have to say, well, you know, like this just doesn't matter that I'm better at this thing, but it's something that I can take pride or confidence in that I've gotten better at this thing. Like I've been doing it, I've been getting better, and I'm happy with that. And we don't seem to focus on that enough here because at all levels of solo queue, it is just a troll joke fest. Like nobody takes it seriously and nobody tries. And pros, like if you watch watch a Korean solo queue game. You watch like Faker or like Abdo or one of these guys stream, and you see one of their games from high level solo queue. It's like better than some LCS teams. Like no garbage, and sometimes it's filled with LCK pros, and sometimes it's filled with guys who are just on the ladder. Like here's the thing: in Korea, solo queue is so important, and people take it so seriously that if you get to number 1 or like the top 10 even in solo queue, actually, I think I heard on maybe it was a Summoning Insight or something where I heard Loco saying that like literally the top 100 players from Korean solo queue are already all contacted, like working with a talent agency or trying out for teams. Like that's how much priority they place on that. Like if you're taking the game that seriously, that, you know, here being rank 1 doesn't mean anything. Like we have terrible players at rank 1 all the time, and like obviously they're not terrible players, but like when you compare them to pros, though, yeah, they're not good. They wouldn't be a good pro, and that is honestly depressing and just not acceptable. Like we need more people here to pay serious attention, really try in their solo queue games, and that starts at the bottom. So literally, that's at the bottom and at the top. We need the pros to do it, so it's top down. But then we need, you know, everybody at every elo, no matter what elo you're at right now, just take it seriously. I'm not asking you to like flame your teammates or like demand to win every game. Actually, you shouldn't win every game. You lose a lot. You learn a lot more when you lose than when you win. So you should be happy with the loss in the sense that you can learn a lot from it. Spend some time reviewing your own gameplay. Really try to get better. Also, our scouting, like, and again, this is partially because we don't have good players domestically, so this would cost so much more money. But you know, if North American teams are serious, they should have somebody living in Korea or in Europe or in China, in these other regions, whose sole job it is to watch solo queue games. Like you should be spending 8 hours a day watching solo queue games. And that sounds obnoxious, yes, but like Korea's pulling all this talent out of solo queue. And by the time they get to the top of the ladder, they're already being tried out for LCK teams. Like it's too late. Or you'd have to buy out their contract or something. Like I think in the long run, it would be cheaper to do it this way. You just find some top talent in solo queue from Korea or China, and that isn't on a team, and you take them and you bring them to North America, and they will show you why these Korean teams constantly have these new waves of players, because their solo queue matters. All of a sudden, people are trying. Like in North America, no one thinks that if they get to the top player, if they get to the top rank, that they're going to get contacted. That's not really a thing, but maybe a couple players get found out like that, but it's more like incestuous in the sense that you kind of have to make friends with the pro players of that elo and be like, hey, you should let me try out for your team. And then they'll go, oh yeah, actually you're not bad. Let's get you a tryout or something. Whereas in Korea, you don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to be friends with anybody. You just hit the top of the ladder and people are going to notice you. And I think in North America, that needs to be taken a bit more seriously. Like pros need, I mean, the other thing that pros could do is, because the scrim blocks are all the same time, right? So like all the teams have the same like scrim block times roughly. If a lot of the pro teams were smart, I think what they would do is say, hey, like demand that their players play solo queue enough to be near the top of the ladder, and then demand a certain hour, and again, coordinate this between all the pro teams, where those guys are all hitting solo queue at the same time. Because then instead of, you know, random solo queue games, you're gonna have solo queue games filled with pros, and that's gonna elevate the level of the game significantly. And again, if you're like, you know, up there but not quite at the top, you're going to want to grind really hard to get to the top, because you can get put into games with like 7 or 8 pros. What amazing practice that would be. What an amazing opportunity for exposure that would be. And here we just focus too much on streaming and like entertaining and having fun and blah, blah, blah. And listen, this is video games. I'm all for having fun, and I think everybody should be having fun. But if we're going to say with a straight face that we want to be the best and that we want to compete at the international stage, because that's the other alternative. We can just stop saying that. We're okay with being the 4th region. We know we suck. That's fine. Frankly, I wouldn't want to cheer for North America anymore at that point, because I just feel like that's such a shitty cop-out attitude. But we can be upfront about it, and I would have more respect for it than where we're at now, where we're constantly saying, oh yeah, we want to compete, we want to get to this, we want to, but then we're more concerned with streaming, or we're more concerned with having fun, and we're concerned with actually trying to get better, improve, and really take things more seriously, to the point that like Korea has years, a full decade, honestly, of like esports experience over North America. They started way earlier. They have these infrastructure systems in place. We copied some of the infrastructure. That's great. But we're missing scouts, and we're missing a serious talent pool that we can take from. So especially like if you're Diamond 1 or above right now and you're listening to this, you really need to put your start trying. Like take every game super seriously. And again, I do not mean that you have to win every game. What I'm saying is you have to try your best every game, and after you play a couple of games, maybe play one less game a day, but every single game that you play at the end of your session, like go back and watch them all instead of playing that last game when you're tilted or whatever, and see what could I have done better? Where could I improve? Spend some time watching VODs. One guy who I can't recommend enough is LS, and some of his like coaching sessions and some of the things that he focuses on in terms of lane management, wave management, where to position in lane, like some of the smallest details that seem boring, honestly. They matter, especially as you get to the highest levels. And like those little things can make such a big difference. But ultimately, like this isn't a decision that like Steve from Liquid can make to make North America better. He can't do it, not by himself. The entire region needs to decide that we want to stop sucking, or we're going to be in this dumpster fire forever. Anyway, guys, that's enough of my rant. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope if you're in North America right now, hopefully that wasn't too harsh. But I mean, I am too. I feel the same level of pain. It sucks that Liquid got knocked out. We tried, but better luck next year. See you next week.